Good morning. My name is Olugbenro Oyekan. I work for the International School of Management, Lagos. And I'm glad to say that this workshop is a program of Online Campus Nigeria, OCN, and that OCN is the virtual facility of the International School of Management, Lagos. So this edition of our workshop is the second one. We had one previously last month. And based on requests and many who were not able to join the previous one, we decided that we should take the discussion further. So today, I am going to be talking a little bit about some of the things I had said last time and some other things that are entirely new. My colleague, Dumi Oguzie, will be our host. And please take this from me. We don't intend to keep you for too long here, unnecessarily longer than necessary. That's what I mean, too long. So I will take the first 35 to 45 minutes to talk about everything that's contained in my presentation. And then the next 15 to 20 minutes to take questions and contributions from you all. So when it's time for you to either write or be unmuted to ask your question, we will let you know. So please try to keep your background totally free of any noise that could disrupt presentation. And thank you very much for that. Okay, there's many things I spoke about the last time that I'm not going to be talking about this time because a lot of them bothered on the pandemic. And of course, this presentation is not about pandemic. It just happened that there was no way we could have talked about this without mentioning the pandemic. So for the most part of my presentation, the last time that delved into the pandemic, I'm not going to be talking about that. So I'm going to skip some of them. That's like the first 18 or so slides. So I'm going to be, I'll go straight to the key things that we need to talk about. And that is the reality of workplaces right now. And more importantly for our presentation is the learning and development implication for that new reality currently. Now, I would like to start from the point of the fact that currently there is a lot of instability in the environment everywhere, within the markets and in workplaces. Yes, because of the pandemic. And that has left a lot of people with, no choice than to seek alternatives. But it's even very difficult. When I mention about instability in the market, I talk about both the supply and the demand side of the market. So if you produce goods or services, you're not even sure what quantity at what point in time your customers want again, or what is exactly your buyer's behavior pattern. Things have changed, and a lot of people would need to do a lot of market research again to maintain fairly, stable stability. And now, despite that, this is not an opportunity for a stalemate. Individuals are losing jobs. Companies are literally confused. But does that mean we will not venture? No. Everyone will still have to make the opportunity to look for where the chances are and try to take them, but take them cautiously. So there are still opportunities. They might be very scarce. In fact, in some areas, there are many, depending on what is your industry, what's your market like, and who are your customers. So there are still opportunities. But because we are limited in terms of physical access, which is what we've been used to, we probably don't know where those opportunities are or where to turn. Even those that are looking for a job right now probably don't know where to turn to or so. So if you are not able to connect with the market, whether your labor market or market for goods and services, if you're not able to connect virtually, it becomes a form of disability on your activity. Notwithstanding, there is need for people to be more observant of the environment and look for superior information wherever they are, analyze them, and go after the opportunities wherever they are, but most cautiously. But I also need to bring something to our notice. Now, what we saw, what we noticed, what brought us to this point was the first wave of the coronavirus. I don't like to talk much about this virus, but it is the reality of the present time. The second wave is imminent. And this is about the time a lot of governments and nations are easing the lockdown. And usually, from experiences all over the world, from the pandemic of a century ago, the second wave is usually the worst. There are usually 3 waves, the first, second, and the third until it eases out gradually. So it looks like what we need to be learning, since this is going to be around for another round about 18 months or more, what we should be learning right now is a coping mechanism. How do we live life in a way that, despite the pandemic, we'll still be who we are and we want to go about our normal, daily lives. But in the midst of that, because the virus is still around, we can't live just anyhow or as we used to live. So we, as individuals or companies, need to devise our coping mechanism, whatever that means for each person or each business. I don't know exactly, but everybody needs to understand the nature of his business and be able to put in place the mechanism that helps him cope very well. And be mindful of the fact that the second wave is usually the worst of the 3 waves. So yesterday, we had 745 new cases in Nigeria. And I think that's the highest so far. So we're expecting between now and next week, we'll hear a lot more cases, maybe over 1,000 cases per day at a point in time. And we hear a lot of that. So people need to become more careful. Even for companies that are going back to work, I think it's a very, it's a tricky time, to want to go back to work. A lot of professionals, business owners and managers need to have a rethink about whether they need to wait for another few weeks before going back to work or they should go back to work now. But depending on the level of preparedness for coping, people can go back to work. But again, human lives are more important than businesses. Businesses have suffered more than enough until now. And the next 2 or 3 weeks might not be the best time that you will make the money we have lost since March. So, that's being as it is. I said it the last time, and I'd like to emphasize it again, that this is the time that a lot of companies will make maybe marginal, maybe significant, depending on the type of company, industry, and the size and the orientation of the owners. But companies have started making and will continue to make investment into ICT equipment. So how much of that investment every company makes depends on their operation, their type, their industry, their size, and their capital. But the reality is that because ICT is what is fueling continuity for now, there is no way any business, any serious business, will want to continue without making at least one form of investment in ICT. I mean, it includes all of those things. It can mean spending more on, on your internet. It can mean spending more on telephone calls. It can mean, paying for Zoom license. It can mean, your Microsoft Teams license. So a whole lot of things, apart from the many other things that are like, safety issues and all of those ICT-enabled equipment. That's very necessary. Now, in order to get it right, there are skill sets that are very important for these three sets of stakeholders: the company itself, employees. By employees, I mean both, managers and the lower level individuals. But when you look at the list I have on the screen right now, you will see that there seems to be a lot more in terms of skills that is required of an average employee. Because your technical skills are there, but if they used to be 70% of the skills you needed to have in order to perform very well before, the reality of the new order has reduced the relevance to about 40%. So there are new skills that individuals need to learn, like social adequacy skill, ability to adapt, planning skills, flexible routines, resilience, self-confidence, the ability to learn, which is very, very important, because without the skill of ability to learn, it's difficult to learn all these skills, including multitasking, including strong sense of urgency and drive. So this is the time for an average employee to show that he's got what it takes to cope within this time. Otherwise, it is not enough for us to think that some people have lost their job. A lot more people might still lose their job. And as people lose, some smart people will still gain some job. So as jobs are lost and gained, we'll get to a point of equilibrium at some point in time. So I want people to really understand that, every market is self-regulating. And as jobs are lost and gained, not all of them will be lost and lost permanently. And as new ones are gained, when markets improve, when businesses improve and there is more revenue and the economy does better, there will be time for people to get new jobs and things that everyone will fare better. But for companies, there's need for management of companies to realize that at this point, there is need for a lot more flexibility, investment in technology, like I said, and agile operation. So that agility is in terms of how quickly you respond to changes in the market and the demands of the business itself. And at the same time, making sure that costs are not growing unnecessarily because, the resources are not even there. But an important factor when companies are trying to cut their costs is their dynamic capability. So at this time, when companies cut costs, there's an element of cost that managers need to be very careful with, and that is the cost that associates with dynamic capability. The dynamic capability of any company is what makes your company unique in your market. It is the reason why customers leave other service providers and choose to come to you. So for different companies, there are different things. For some companies, it might just be the look and the fancy of their website. For some other companies, it can be their location. For some other companies, it can be the refinement of their employees. So there are different 1, 2, 3 key skills for different companies. Management needs to understand that when you cut costs on your dynamic capability, which are the reasons consumers or customers leave other providers to come to you, what makes you that way undercuts your share of the market. Because when you cut costs on your dynamic capability, your customers go elsewhere because the reason why they come to you is no longer there. So there are so many other elements, of course, that companies can cut, but at this point in time, they are very important, critical, elements of course that needs to be preserved because they are the reason that you are who you are, what you are in the market. For managers, there's need for a lot of, one of the most difficult things for leadership and managers in the organization is communication. So 50% of the reasons why a lot of managers don't get really along well with their team member is, it's not because they don't have good ideas or initiative, but sometimes as good as those initiatives are, they may not be able to communicate it exactly the way they should. And because teams are made up of different individuals, different backgrounds, different mindsets, managers need to learn more the act of communication and how to manage relationship. Otherwise, it's also possible for people to leave their job right now if companies don't sack them, if they are having additional frustration from their team leaders in addition to the general frustration faced by everyone. So managers have some work to do, and it's very important. Now, one key important that will make companies run into problem in the bid to restructure and put in place coping mechanisms why this is still going to continue for quite a while, is if companies refuse to or are unable for one reason or the other to put in place sound operational arrangements and documentation. So in the previous life, I'm sorry to call it previous life, we were used to a particular way of doing things, and our policies and procedures were based on what we were sure of. Now, that certainty has gone away. So this might be the first time a lot of people are working from home in their life. And so it's affecting it's affecting even performance, and it's affecting even the contract of employment. So people HR managers find it difficult to even measure performance. So if you're working from home, whether you were at the meeting you were meant to attend, or how to measure your inputs or outputs has become even more difficult. So HR managers or managers that are responsible for quantifying inputs and measure your outputs and be able to measure performance needs to be sure that they devise a new way of quantifying the input, both the quality and quantity of input that every individual puts into the work. And I think when companies are able to measure this in very scalable terms, it's very easy to tell who is working and who is not working. The last time I was making this presentation, I talked about it has become inescapable that nowadays we can't continue to say people should come to work by 9 o'clock and close by 5 p.m. and monitor all of them on Zoom meeting or Microsoft Teams. No, but there's got to be a way to it. People's efforts need to be measured in terms of specific deliverables that can be measured by either deadlines or outputs, quantity or quality or outputs, or in terms of time, period. So if you ask, an employee to achieve specific things by 12 o'clock tomorrow, and you figure out that it will take a day to achieve it, whether he achieved it in 2 hours or 3 hours should not be your problem again. As long as you're sure that the quantity of output you're expecting and the timing you give to it, it's equal and it's correspond. So whether it does it in the morning or in the afternoon or in the night, that doesn't count again, as long as the person is able to deliver. So results will help us to measure more what an individual has put into productivity now than any other thing. So there needs to be new set of policies, procedures, and documents that makes it very clear what is the quantity and quality of input that is required of everyone. So, and all of this information are all over the place. They must be, they are compulsory. And the more robust they are, the better. There are best approaches all over the world, and they are actually the engine of teleworking. Without them, teleworking cannot work effectively, and they are quite adaptable. Everyone can get one type of document or the other and scale it to your own peculiarity. So more important than those documents are also right people in terms of their size, their roles, right team, the quality and the ability of the people, the right size. Now, right about now, it can be, it's, 10 or 20 people or 5 people can be too much or too little for an operation, depending on how you have quantified it. And how you assign their roles is also very important. So in talking about the right people and the right team, organizations have to be clear about the people's specifications, their quality and their ability, the size of every team, and the roles to be performed by those teams. So there is more precision in terms of the required input for achieving a particular set of objectives. There's also need for the right relationship, and that's, is required by senior management and functional managers. And there should be individuals who are able to foster trust, encourage open dialogue, and be very clear about goals and objectives. The more vague the goals and objectives are, the more likely it is that they will not be achieved. But when they are very clear, they can be measured, and the measurement varies. It can be in terms of time, it can be in numbers, it can be naira and kobo, it can be in terms of outcome. And then there needs to also be the right touch points, milestones, what time to do what and what time to end it. Everything at this point needs to be very specific, very measurable and standardized, with opportunity for regular updates. So if companies are going to work away from a central place, there is need for a regular update. It can be weekly, it can be quarterly, but I think the idea of a weekly update works for most organizations so that people don't slip over updates. Then the right technology, okay? Very important. I've stressed the importance of technology. Quickly, I need us to move away from all of this and go into the crux of the matter for today, which is learning and development, implication of the current reality for the learning and development market. What happens is that we are at a time that everybody is unsure of the best way to learn, the best place to learn, and at what price is the best. And so because of that, some providers out there are taking advantage of this cluelessness. And that is not the only thing they take advantage of. They also take advantage of models that are not really capable, that are not effective and efficient for the level of learning that is required and promised by those providers. So it's a time that people are out to cheat companies, and companies are at the mercy of these cheats because they on their own cannot tell whether they are getting measurable value for money. And it's a very funny thing. And this information needs to go out to as many people as possible, that there are key implications for pedagogy. Pedagogy is how learning is designed in ways that it will meet its objectives, what we call learning outcomes. And it will be efficient, it will be effective, and learning will have truly taken place. Do not forget that previously, even what we were doing in many of the places were not really effective. So the market was used to a system where somebody just comes because he has so many years of experience and he can speak very well. They put him in class as a facilitator and he starts taking the people a whole day, 2 days, 3 days. And what many of the people do is they engage, they entertained participants. And participants rate them as very nice because they were entertained. But there is no consideration for the objective for the course. So a lot of times organizations throw away millions of money in the name of employee training and development. Now, as if that was not bad enough, we have found ourselves at a time where life is no longer stable and nobody really knows where to turn. And what many of the providers in the market are offering right now, it's not worth what they asked for. I mean, believe me, and even when they say, come and pay 10,000 naira for a course, I can tell you that the cheap price is a bait, because in reality, the effort they put into such delivery is not even worth 1,000 naira. And I will explain that to you. One of the most popular methods, I will share with you and I will let you know. But to clarify something, a lot of people are unsure what's the difference between e-learning and online course. In reality, okay, they are both two different types of distance learning, but there is no clear-cut demarcation between what is e-learning and what's online course in practice, because both of them are used interchangeably. In theory, a lot of academics think that e-learning have been around for a while and that it is not as effective as online courses. And in addition, that online courses take place on LMS, learning management systems, or e-learning does not take place on LMS. These are, it's a call for, individual judgment. It's not exactly so in reality. So they are really difficult. So if somebody tells you what I'm offering is e-learning or online course, it doesn't still mean anything. It doesn't come to anything. You need to ask them details, the specifics of their offering. That name, e-learning or online course, does not say anything. It doesn't add up. It doesn't say anything. So it's the first point that companies need to look out for. People that are offering you online course or e-learning, they can use that to confuse you. I mean, I don't blame them. The problem is also that many of the people don't also know what they're saying when they say. So for me, I don't care whether you call it e-learning or online course. I'm more interested in the details, and by the details, I mean both the content of the offering and the design of the delivery. That will allow me to know where when, and to what extent is learning taking place. And until you are able to verify that, whatever name anybody calls it does not matter. The funniest part of it is that a lot of offerings in the market right now, including those who are expected to set the pace, this is what they do. They put people in Zoom meetings and talk to them 5 hours per day for 2 days and charge them 75,000 naira or 125,000 naira. And that's because that has been what they have been used to charging. And the people they are collecting this sum of money from don't even know any better, because they have been used to a system where they just put everybody together in a hall or meeting room and talk and entertain them and chat, and there's no way to really measure effectiveness. So I have taken a couple of train the trainer classes that participants came to me and asked me, how exactly can I measure return on training investments? My MD has been asking me, how can I measure it? And that's a very, very good question for a lot of people to ask. But I was able to help as much as possible. I mean, I told them what are the methods in theory, but in reality, what are the best ways to measure it? And that needs to be an important factor right now if you are giving your training and development job to anybody. So now, what we have out there are many ineffective versions of online courses or e-learning, call it anything. Unfortunately, they have become popular over time, and most people cannot tell apart what's the difference. So a lot of people are falling victim for quick fix or easy way out option, and they don't know any better. You can't really blame them. There's also a strong bandwagon effect. These people are doing it that way. It means that must be the right thing. So, but different arrangements and offerings, many of them are capable of confusing unsuspecting demand end of the market, which are the companies that are paying for training and development. But there are a couple of things I would like us to clarify, at least from my own. One of the cautions that the market needs to note is that popularity in training and development as we speak today is not exactly the same thing as quality. So that the school is popular, that the facilitator is popular, that it speaks very well and it engages the people, it's not actually, the determinant of quality. You can't tell that there is quality. So we need to be very careful. And when people flock to the popular side, they need to wait for a moment and ask themselves the very important questions. What do I need? And what is this person offering? Are they exactly the same thing? Unfortunately, there is no regulator in this market. So a lot of people are doing what they like. But one of the most effective methodologies so far is called critical action learning. I would like to come back to this later. I'll talk about it in the midst of my discussion. Now, I have just talked to you about the fact that some methods have become very popular and they seem to be gaining traction because of their popularity and because they are easy to undergo. An average employee that the company sends for training these days prefer easy way out. They go in there today with some discussion and few exchanges, they're fine. But a day or two after, you can't really tell whether there was any learning that took place. They are called, this model that I want to talk about, we all know them. They are called the massive open online courses, MOOCs. But there is a snag on their cost benefits. And I will explain what I mean. You know, the Allison, the Coursera, Udemy, EDX, Udacity, all of them have been around for like over a decade now, and they have millions, hundreds of millions studying with all of them. But how come, and they are backed by powerful universities, including Harvard. EDX is a partnership of MIT and Harvard. But how come those universities are not issuing their credit-bearing certificates for all of these courses? Because the objective of these massive open online courses originally, number one, was for those universities to make information about certain courses or the other available to everyone at almost no cost, and also hopefully that will take their brands further into the rest of the world. That was the original founding purposes. And as people continue to troop into them, they gain popularity. But what they lack is depth. There's no rigor, there's no relevance. And all of people who have taken them will understand what I'm talking about. So it's possible to sign to one of those things, stare at the screen for some minutes. After some time, just click next, 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 until it's time to take the objective question and answer. And if you can do that repeatedly for some time, you can complete the course. Much as many of those MOOCs say it's 1 week or 2 weeks, or there are things you can sit down at and complete in a few hours. That's how shallow they are. But unfortunately, that is what a lot of training and development companies, business school, that is the model they have resorted to. And they charge far less in order to give clients the impression that it's cheaper. Another problem is that for many of those MOOC, companies, the rate of retention or completion continues to drop year in, year out. I don't know about you, but for me, I think I've tried about 3 of them. I never completed any one of them, And I know that if I ask people, there are 6 out of 10 people who have tried many of these courses, never completed them. And that rate of enrollment, it's growing, but the rate at which it's growing is reducing. So they're not really as successful as they look, but because they adopt like a mass production kind of model, it pushes out the information there, and a lot of people who don't really care about quality or who just want to learn something for the sake of learning register there, and some people finish it, some people don't finish it. So, but from the perspective of quality, they are low quality education, and they are mere complementary assets to learner. They're not tangible assets. And there's also a lot of monotony because people are left to interface with their computers or their or phablets and the content of the course all through the learning. That's not anywhere in the world. That's not a way to learn. But unfortunately, that is what most of the people offer right now for either $10 or 35,000 naira. And they create the impression that it's more affordable, but nobody is talking about the quality and the depth of learning that takes place. So these are part of the things that learning and development experts, HR managers, managing directors of companies, executive directors in charge of human development need to be aware of. This is apparently not the right replacement for what we used to have. It's nowhere near it because the depth is very shallow. The learning cannot be compared. and it was not originally made for this purpose. So it's not suitable for the purpose. Now, but when we talk about online learning types in general, there are many of them, but I would like to quickly talk about, spend like few seconds on each of them. Some of them are called instructor-led, self-paced, interactive, synchronous, asynchronous, individual, group. But everyone that use any of these words for you, please ask them for the meaning and how they intend to achieve it. These words, people will use it. Some of them will even change it. They will change instructor-led to facilitator-led. They will change a lot of the meaning. They will mess around, they will play with adjectives. But you need to ask them, what is the meaning of each of those things? What do they mean by asynchronous? What is synchronous? What makes it interactive? And how is it blended compared to pure online? What is the advantage? What are the disadvantages? Questions, critical, very important questions we need to learn. Now, for any online learning to be truly efficient and effective, I care about the following things: its content, its design, including its delivery, the activities, the opportunity for critical self-reflection, its types of interaction, whether there is learning sets, arrangement, whether it's action-based, and what are the multiple modes of learning available. If an online learning cannot answer all of these questions and answer them in very affirmative ways, then you're not likely to gain something tangible from it. You're not likely to. These are important information. And if you're going to part with your money, even if it's 10,000 naira, even if it's $10, even if it's whatever all of them charge, 35,000 naira, you need to ask them the relevant questions. Because most of the times when they charge so little, I can assure you that you're getting almost nothing. So at the end of the day, you are paying them for an arrangement that helps them advertise their brands to you. So you're paying for the advertisement, and you're the one they're advertising to. So that's the way it is, because they don't add value. So what I think also is that many of the players in the learning and development market right now, I mean, companies that come out as training companies or business schools, they lack the knowledge of the neuroscience of learning. So it becomes really difficult for them to have a system of instructional design. I can tell you that one of the best means of learning, it's a blended means. A blended means is one that has minimum of 30% offering online, by online means, and the rest by any other means. It can be face-to-face, it can be virtual. But as long as it has a mix of at least 30% online of the 100% of the learning, if it takes place online, in addition to other methods, that makes it blended. It's about one of the most effective if whoever is designing the content and really understand the appropriate instructional design that will deliver the learning outcomes adequately. This is where a lot of people are found wanting. So we have in our learning and development market right now, a lot of people who have a lot of experience, professional experience, or even have academic experience, but they forgot that neuroscience of learning is another field on its own. It helps you to understand what's the functionality of brain in learning as it applies to different personalities, individuals, circumstances. And so nobody can really design an instruction for delivery that will be good enough if he doesn't understand this. It will be very difficult. And so some important facts to note that is that, look, currently there is no empirical proof of what we call learning style theory. A lot of us, like to talk about theory of learning style. That I like most, either by doing or by hearing or by watching or by touch. It's a very popular style. And many of those people out there who offer training and development programs teach participants about learning style. But in reality, that learning style theory, as popular as it is, lacks empirical basis. Research shows that there is nothing like learning style. There is nothing like learning style. There might be a more preferred way for an individual to learn. It does not necessarily mean that that is the best way learning will take place. So if you like to take information in some ways, whether by hearing or watching or touching, that is the way you'd like to take information. That way does not necessarily help to retain that information. So retaining is actually learning. So if you can't retain and recall, learning has not taken place. Learning has only taken place when you take information, process it, and you can recall it or use it for something. But how you take that information, whether by seeing or touching or listening, has no impact on your ability to recall and use that information. So that is why learning style theory is it's a myth. It doesn't exist. Okay, a lot of the people who also design, instructions don't understand that people have varying preferences beyond the 5 senses. Some of those preferences include personal motivation and individual desires for learning. If somebody really wants to learn about something and he has an incentive, he has something he wants to gain by learning, it's more likely that he will be more available. His mind will be more ready in the class than somebody who doesn't want to learn about it. That's a motivation for learning. There are also biological processes involved in learning, such as stress, mood, or feelings that determines whether a person will be in the right frame of mind to learn. So when a person that's knowledgeable in instructional design is trying to structure a delivery system, he makes sure that he makes provision for all these variations so that majority of the people in the class will be reached, if not everybody in the class. Now, there's also the problem of relationship between hemisphere and sensory dominance, impact of cognitive control, which is your ability to suspend your feelings and focus your, cognition on what you are doing. There's dynamic. So there's a lot of things that a lot of the people are not considering. But let me show you this video briefly to buttress the fact, I think this is like less than 5 minutes, to buttress the fact that there is nothing like learning style. And this is from research all over. Enjoy it.
Have you ever heard that you learn best if you're taught in a way that fits your learning style? Today's classrooms are often built around using teaching methods that cater to students' learning styles. Your learning style identifies the way that you most effectively absorb information from your environment. By answering a few questions on a quiz, you can instantly identify what way you learn best. But will this help you? Evidence suggests that identifying your learning style may do more harm than good.
According to Neil Fleming's VAK model, there are 3 main types of learners: visual, auditory, and kinesthetic learners. Each type describes the way in which you best learn information. If you're a visual learner, you prefer to receive information visually. You might look for diagrams, maps, pictures, and videos to learn a new concept. If you're an auditory learner, you prefer to listen to information. You might like to attend lectures, listen to discussions, and read aloud. And if you're a kinesthetic learner, you prefer to learn by doing. You might like to create projects or presentations or play games to learn new concepts.
If there is any truth to the idea that learning styles and teaching styles go together, then learners with a certain style should learn best with instruction tailored to that style. But does scientific research really support the existence of these different learning styles? Are you really just confined to one learning style? Here's why the answer is no.
In a recent study, researchers worked with a group of university students. First, they identified each student's preferred learning style. Then, each student was presented information through all three styles and later tested on their memory of that information. According to learning styles theory, you would expect that students would have the best memory for information that they learned through their preferred learning style. A visual learner would perform best on the test of visual memory, an auditory learner on that of auditory memory, and a kinesthetic learner on the test of kinesthetic memory. However, this was not the case. The researchers found that learning through a preferred style did not aid in memory any better than learning in another style. This experiment shows that when learning styles are put to the test under controlled conditions, there is no difference in performance.
Okay, so I'm not going to take too much of our time. I think the point is made, and there's a dot of research that shows that that doesn't happen. And when you talk to people who are meant to provide learning and development services, and they talk to you along those lines, it's the first point for you to know they don't know what they're talking about, okay? Now, what is important, and I want all of us to pay attention to, is what is called Ebbinghaus Curve of forgetfulness. Now, any method that does not involve some level of repetition in the way you learn does not really help you to learn enough. So forget about all those 5 hours on Zoom or Microsoft Teams, 5 hours today, 5 hours tomorrow, 5,000. The research shows that after 20 minutes, people have forgotten 58% of it. By day 6, more than 75% of it is gone. So we prefer a system that takes an extended learning time. So our average 2-day course, will not put them on 2 weeks. So it gives us enough time to repeat the learning outcomes through different methods. And what Ebbinghaus Curve says is that the only way to drive home learning is through revision and repetition. And that's what we do. And that's why we prefer people will learn a bit every day over an extended period of time. And when you do that, this is what happens. Look, some of the people call it reinforcement, but it's called spaced repetition. So when you look at the difference between these two graphs, this one says latest by the 31st day, what you can retain will be maybe 25% of all of those stories they told you on the webinar. That's even when you're very smart. Okay. But in reality, we have a method that says, look, through spaced repetition, we make you learn almost the same thing over a period of 2 or 3 days without you knowing that it's the same thing because of our instructional design. And what we would ordinarily have taught you for 2 days, we'll teach you for 2 weeks in bit sizes, and it stays with you longer. But the only thing that I found amusing in our environment is that because this method involves a bit of reading and writing, a lot of people are G3, usually at the beginning of the course. But I found out that closer to the end, a lot of people don't want to go again. I would want to take this discussion further than this. Hopefully, if we get enough requests, we might extend this discussion, by having a third version of this presentation. But I just hope everybody understands the fact that it's a different time, the market has changed, and there are people that are taking advantage of it. Ask and ask very well. Even if the tuition fee for a course is 1,000 naira, the cheaper they are, the more careful you need to be. Thank you very much.
You're supposed to go back to a slide.
Okay, thank you very much. That slide on, please remind me.
Yes.
No, it's
the
here.
Critical action.
The critical action learning. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, now, in my experience and from all of research, the best methodology is critical action learning method. I can talk about it because even if I say it, it doesn't look like an idea anybody can. If you don't know it, you don't know it. So there's got to be a way, a smart instructor who also knows how to design instruction takes care of all, because for every course, there are specific learning outcomes. Learning outcomes are the important knowledge takeaway you want the participants to have. Those are the learning outcomes. For a course, they may not be more than 5. Forget about all those long outlines that they share with you. For a course, they may not be more than 5. So a smart instructor who is also knowledgeable looks for how to make sure that insert all those 5, 6, maximum, for a course, they can be up to 10, usually less than 10. Inserts it in critical activities. And in a way that when people are engaged in it, the memory of it doesn't go away soon. And it goes through a process of repetition. So it can be a bit of reading, it can be a bit of argument, it can be a bit of writing, it can be a bit of case study, it can be a bit of videos, it can be a bit of a lot of activities. There can be 10 different activities to drive home one learning outcome. Okay, and so what makes it critical is the involvement of personal reflection, ability of people to reconcile perspectives. Because when you give them material, it's good to let every individual work both as individuals and as members of groups. And so that comes with an opportunity for them to exchange, understand. So if you give one material to 10 people and ask them to go and read it individually and bring all the 10 of them together after some time, and you ask them questions, you will find out that there will be people that understood and can remember certain parts of the material. Some of that people that can be part A, part of the material. Some of that people can be able to interpret part B. Other people can be able to interpret part C, part D. But you find out that some people are missing out on one part or the other, and other people are missing out on. So because the takeaway from each individual is limited to their individual abilities. But when you bring them together and try to reconcile perspectives and assumptions, what group A, who are focused on part A of the material, what they did not see in part B, C, and D, people who saw that can take that opportunity to help them learn it. And in the course of that exchange, which is a very subtle type of discursive dialogue. It's like a disagreement, like they're discussing, but they're arguing at the same time. But because it's really coordinated, there's a facilitator who moderates everything. It comes out really well, and the learning is fantastic. That is what the critical action learning does. A majority of the things are tied to practical work experience. They're not just theories. Thank you. So, it's taking close to 1 hour, and I'm sorry about that. We'd like to take your questions right now. And I think we should take all the questions at once. Then I can answer everything at once. So that saves some time.
Okay, we've had one hand up for a while. That's Michael. Michael, I just unmute you.
That's who?
Michael. Michael, I just unmute you. Please ask your question. Hello.
Could you please ask your question, Michael? Okay, we should come back to him.
Okay.
Can we take another, if there's another?
Yes, Olubumi, please ask your question. think we lost Olubumi.
Hello, Olubumi.
Hello. Good morning, sir.
Hello. Good morning, ma'am.
Yes, sir. I'd like to ask on learning styles.
Okay.
How it's become a myth, and I am a preschool teacher.
Okay.
And this concept has actually been taught for a while. It has been around for a while. We've tried to use it with children and all that. But now it's like this mindset is changing. Yeah. I, as a teacher, how do I integrate this in my class?
Okay, I'll talk about
because
that.
It's always seemed real. It has always seemed like it's normal. There are some students that is when you take them out, when they play outside, they learn more. Some children is when you sing to them that they remember. So how do I balance it? Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. All right. This next question.
For now, there is no hand up, so I think we could go ahead to respond to Olubumi's question.
Okay, Olubumi, what happens these days? I know that theory has been around for long, and many of us believed it until there were thousands of research carried out, and the research shows that the claim of the learning set theory is false. There is nothing like that. This is what I think. An average human being has a method that he thinks is most convenient for him to learn. Okay, so like talk about the children, you give an example of that. They like to go out and play before learning takes place. Okay, some other people like by reading, like text and understand. Some people like audio messages for them to understand. But that is their preferred ways of taking information. It does not mean that learning actually took place. So what can you do? It does not mean you are going to stop teaching them that way. No, that's not what you mean. It still makes sense for you to teach them in the way they prefer to learn. But take note that the fact that they like to learn that way does not mean they will remember again. So you need to find out that beyond how they like to take information, what can you do to ensure that after taking in the information, they can process it and they can recall it. So the excitement of learning at the initial stage is what this theory seems to talk about. But that is not learning. Until you are able to process it and recall it, learning has not taken place. So the fact that someone is excited at learning one way does not mean he will remember the next day. And if he doesn't remember the next day, or is not able to use that knowledge, to transform anything on himself, learning has not actually taken place. It's until when he can use that information the way he should, that's when learning has taken place. So you need to figure out what is the predominant ways, because the research shows that if you put people together and people say, this is the style I prefer, this is the style I prefer, this is the style I prefer, despite teaching them that way, it still did not improve their learning, their ability to retain and recall. It did not improve it. So what improves the ability to recall is beyond the style they prefer to receive the information. There are other factors that needs to be considered. That's where I talk about neuroscience of learning. And that's where I talk about the neuroscience of learning. Other factors need to be considered. Factors such as, what is the design of this instruction? How bit size or chunky are they so that people can take it in gradually? How often do you review it so you can tell whether they will remember? If you don't factor all of this into it, learning will not have taken place. So you need to make sure that there's opportunity for constant revision, reviews, or rehearsal, or teaching the same thing in different ways in order for them to really be able to retain it and recall when they need it. Thank you.
Please, if you have any questions, can you raise your hand so I'll unmute you to speak? Okay, Dr. Yemi asked a question earlier. Dr. Yemi, I'm going to unmute you now so you could ask your question to speaker.
Okay.
Dr. Yemi, please go ahead.
Hello, Dr. Yemi.
Dr. Yomi, sorry.
Yomi, okay, apology. Okay. Well, is there any other person?
No other hands are up yet. I think we should give.
We've taken 65.
Okay,
Yes, please go ahead.
Dr. Yomi, please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity. I just want to ask, because I can hear the speaker when he was talking about the learning design, the instructional design and other stuff, that many of those people that design instruction now, that they don't really do it in the right way. But when we're talking about an organization now, and they need to learn maybe self space in their own organization, how do you think they can design a very very good instruction that will suit their own purpose when we are talking about this? Because I think from my own little study, I realized that need assessment will be needed to know exactly what those organizations need before the instruction can be developed. But from what you are just giving out to us now, it seems that Nigerians have not been doing it right. I don't know if I'm the one that is misconstruing it or that's the truth about it. Because here where I am, you can't just design any instruction without going through the need assessment to know what they really need in that organization. Even in the K-12, you have to know what the learner really want to learn. You have to interact with them before you can design any instruction for them. So I don't know if that is what is going on in Nigeria or there's or that. That is why I asked that question, that how can organizations design their own learning to suit their own purpose? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Yomi. Okay, you are right. There is need for conducting need assessment. Of course, that is the starting point. It's the foundation. But as you know, we're not going to have foundation and put roofing on it immediately. That's the structure. And that structural part is the instructional design. So when need assessment is conducted, we are clear about what you want these people to know. You know where they need, where there is a gap, and so you want to fill it. You also know what you need to fill it. Maybe like a soft skill, maybe communication skill or letter writing skill. That's what you need to teach these people. But instruction design talks about how do you arrange that information you want to give to them in ways that they can take it in as much as you want them, interpret, okay, think about it and recall it. That is where instructional design takes in. So is it going to be by way of putting them in classroom and talking to them all day? Is it going to be a bit of talking and some activities? Is it going to be all play, role play? Is it going to be all, simulation? Is it going to be a bit of game, a bit of some other activity? Is it going to be video? Are you going to bring another facilitator to talk so that you take part of it? These are necessary different ways in which you can design it. So it is the medium you are going to use to give that information that you have identified, the information you think will bridge the gap you have seen. You know there's a lack, and you know where the information is, but how do you feed them with this information? In what manner, in what form, shade, quantity do you want to present it to them in ways that it will be taken and it will be useful to them? That's where instructional design comes in. Thank you.
Okay, there's a question, Rosemary. Rosemary, I just unmute you. Please ask your question. Hello.
Hello.
Rosemary, please ask your question.
All right.
Okay, she actually dropped a question on the chat group, and so let me ask the question. She said, for schools who don't have the resources for Zoom meetings and Google Classrooms, the WhatsApp platform has not been so effective as most part of the curriculum is yet to be covered. In your opinion, is there any other platform that could be recommended for primary and secondary schools that are not so financially enabled?
There are a lot of open source learning management systems that you can try. But of course, they will need the expertise of an IT person to configure it for you. Right? But there are a lot of open source learning management systems. You will need to train somebody in how to use it and who can then train the other teachers. But open source means you don't pay anything for them. You just need an IT person who knows how to configure LMS to do that for you. So there are a lot of them out there. So just tell an IT person you want an open source LMS. Thank you.
Okay, so we don't have any hands up and no question.
Okay, thank you very much. It's taken a bit longer than planned. Took you 12 minutes longer. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to learning with you another time. Bye-bye. Have a good weekend.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.